Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Yang Gang Fitness Talks. Today I'm joined with Witches for Yang, aka Jackie. Hey Jackie, how's it going?
Fantabulous. How you doing, Steven?
I'm
How's the babies and the mamas?
Oh, she's doing fantastic. We're just
Nice.
loving every day, so taking it as we come, going to work. I'm going to work. She's still on maternity leave, so that's awesome.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
So you adopted the Yang Gang Fitness like somewhere around day one, didn't you? You were
I
you were on
I was
on
pretty
board.
yeah, because I knew I needed to kind of get my butt in gear and like looking, waiting for something, and then and I was really starting to obsess about COVID and Trump and all that stuff, and it was such a beautiful, positive, productive, healthy like alternative to just going down the deep dark spiral that is American politics. So it was beautiful, and I jumped on it like, yes, I need this.
Yeah.
So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, you're
And then I found my buddy. I have a buddy, and we hold each other accountable, which studies show when you're doing these kind of things together and you have support, you're way more likely to be successful. So it's
yeah.
a really great community that just like 3 weeks, you know.
Yeah. 3
Yeah,
weeks and
it's
we've
beautiful.
got a lot
It's
lot
beautiful.
of support. Who's your buddy again? Is that Albert?
Millennials for
Millennials.
millennials free.
Yeah. They're awesome too. They've been killing it.
Yeah. Yep. They took that bull by the horns. That dog will hunt, as we say in Texas.
That's awesome. So what that leads into what was your like I know you said Yang Gang Fitness was your jumping point now, but I know you've shared a lot of your journey on Twitter so far from the very beginning. If you want to elaborate on that some, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I am an open book, and I always have been. If you have the time, I will tell you my life story. So, uh, and the health and fitness thing, I want to share with everybody because I've lost and gained 60 plus pounds 3 times. So I have blown up and lost weight 3 times, and I know now that the way I'm doing it, is more sustainable than the crash dieting, super restrictive, killing yourself with exercise. You just do it, slow and steady wins the race, that kind of good stuff. So, but it starts even earlier. I've been thinking about this conversation, like I was literally couldn't sleep. I wake up and I'm like, I think about, because it's prompted this whole like evaluation of when you said like, what is your, like, what's the root, what's the history of it? It goes way back. So
Wow.
like my grandmother had cancer and she died with dementia. My step grandfather had diabetes. He lost his foot before he died. Uh, Lots of depression, lots of suicide, lots of
Mm.
addiction, and like really toxic, unhealthy behaviors just set from day one. And my, we were really poor, so we didn't get great nutrition. And again, this is all stuff that just looking back just this week in
Oh wow.
preparation for this conversation I'm thinking about, I've broken both of my arms, one of them twice. And
Wow.
now that I think about it, it was probably from malnourishment because it was just doing kid stuff, climbing trees, doing
Yeah.
a cartwheel, that kind of stuff. So my mom at one point was had to be like hospitalized because we were so poor that she just, she had to choose between feeding herself and feeding us.
Wow.
So she went without, and she was malnourished and she collapsed. So, and which is something that's happening right now, So when I think about UBI and the Yang Gang, and I mean, it would have completely changed my childhood, but that there are children right now growing up in these circumstances. So lots of bad toxic habits, but one of the and my husband, I call him an undercover hippie because he's a metalhead, but really he's like a total food snob. He used to work at Whole Foods, and he's the one that taught me how to eat a little better because I grew up Southern fried everything.
Oh
I
yeah.
watched my mom make pork chops and then put the grease back over the pork chops. And, like just the can of bacon grease on the side of the stove for when you needed to fry some eggs up the next time. Uh, and my very favorite uncle, Uncle Frank, he was morbidly obese
Mm.
and he died at 35. And it's just like super tragic because he was an incredibly amazing person, but he ate himself to death essentially. And at 220 pounds on February 13th last year, um, I had like a kind of awakening. Like a really important person, my aunt, who had kind of helped raise us, she died of metastatic breast cancer from a
Hmm.
lifetime of cigarettes and alcohol. And
Oh.
I said that very day, like, I have to do something about my addiction, which was food. And a lot of Americans have a food addiction that they either don't like recognize or like it's not really seen yet really as a real addiction. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, just, stop eating. But there's like so many influences and pressures every day to just consume, 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 and then they're spending so much money on advertising and research and MRI scans to see what sets your brain off the bliss point. I mean, there's really like so the deck is so stacked against us. So on February 13th, I did this program called Bright Line Eating. It's a 14-day challenge. Um, no sugar, no flour, no snacking, 3 square meals that were weighed and constrained, which
Hmm.
seems incredibly like extreme. But the founder, Susan Pierce Thompson, she says, it's extreme. Somebody losing a foot every 30 seconds because of diabetes. So we have to like, it's all about, and she's psychologically trained. She's a psychologist, and she was a food addict, and she went into psychology to understand why she could not control herself.
Hmm.
And so she was in Food Eaters, Overeaters Anonymous, and all that stuff. And she kind of formed this program based off of other stuff. But it's all about resetting your brain, trying to like bring down those dopamine,
Oh
like the
yeah.
just the tolerance you build up with the sugar, fat, salt,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, of the American standard diet. So uh, it's very plain, it's very simple, it's very restrictive, but there's something. I'm like a person of habit, so I love if I know what's happening for a week and I can follow that plan, I'm good. You don't have to think about it. So they say there's like freedom in the restriction, and I found that
Yeah.
to be true. Just like my steel cut oats every morning. I know it's going to be there for me. I don't have to think about it. And we got it down to an art. So when
Yeah.
you can, they call that automaticity. When you can automate things, not the bad automation, right? You make your life so much simpler. And then you don't have to stress. Like we think about food constantly all day long.
Oh yeah.
And, uh, and with this, so after the 14-day challenge, I continued it. I had a mantra. I want to be fit at 40 because I turned 40 in November. So I started at 198 on February 13th, 2019. And I lost a lot of weight very quickly, pretty steadily till July when I took a swan dive off of the wagon
Hmm.
and it derailed me. So I wanted to discuss this myth of moderation. Some people say, oh, everything in moderation. But when you're talking about food addiction and when you're talking about addictive food, so there's two different things. Like, um, you can't do moderation because it's just there's just I mean, and now I'm really aware of it. If I do have like a sweet or something, the
Yeah.
next day I'm craving it, which I don't crave stuff anymore. But when you do have that little bit of taste, it's
Oh
like the
yeah.
monkey is like, hey, I want back in. So
Yeah. I feel that recently.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes it's just best to abstain 100%. Like you said with your cheesecake, is that what it was?
Yeah. Cheesecake. Oof. It just doesn't come in
Yeah,
the house.
yeah. And the night before I started, and I knew it was going to be tough, and she gives you these preparations for, getting your house in order, literally. I binged. This was one of the things I was started to watch the Great British Cook Off,
Oh
and I
no.
started baking again, and I was just so bad. So the day before I started, I literally ate like half of a chocolate cake. I just ate till I was
Oh
sick
wow.
because I knew that. Yeah, so I like got rid of it, but it was terrible. The next day, I followed it to the T. I got a migraine, which I hadn't gotten in years. I puked and I went to bed at 9 o'clock because I was detoxing essentially. I was
Yeah.
coming off that carbohydrate high, and so it worked really well until it didn't. And then I was exhausted with like being so hyper vigilant about it all the time.
Mm.
So I kind of transitioned just to whole food, plant based. The weight is slower, but it's more sustainable. It's more nourishing. So I'm 40 years old. I had never had a lipid panel done or a blood panel done, and I did that I think last month. And everything, it was a 6 panel lipid, inflammation, what's it called? Glucose intolerance, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Everything was in optimal range except I had triglyceride to HDL ratio was a little high, but
Yeah.
everything else. So for a 40-year-old that's still 30, I'm still 30 pounds overweight. I still have some more to go, but to see that proof that my diet, what I'm doing now, like, because I know at 220 pounds, I know my cholesterol probably wasn't good.
Right.
I know. So I know I wanted to get like, okay, I never have measured this. Where am I right now? And I'm going to do it again at the end of the year.
Oh good.
Um, yeah, and see, hopefully, I'll be at goal weight by, December, and I'll do it again, and hopefully that HDL to triglyceride ratio will be better.
That is the hardest one, at least for me too. Um,
Okay. I
yeah,
didn't know, but I looked it up and it was very esoteric. I couldn't really figure out like how do I fix it? I couldn't
right.
figure it out.
My doctor told me to exercise more, and I'm like, dude, I'm running marathons. I don't know what more I can do for you. So,
Celery
but
juice, right?
yeah, celery juice. Apparently, that's probably what I was missing. This year, my levels will be great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just that one super dose.
I've heard I need to turn it into a Bloody Mary next time. So,
Oh, hey,
uh,
tomatoes, phytonutrients. You got that
yeah,
lycopene? Is that what the one in red?
yeah. Yeah, talking about the food addiction and stuff, what the main thing I'm struggling with right now is diet soda is killing me because I have like one, and just to get that pick me up from the caffeine high, and
Uh,
then I'm just kind of been stuck on it so bad. I went out to my car from work to go dig through my car for change to get enough to get a diet soda out of the
oh,
vending machine.
I guess it's better than Red Bull, right?
Oh, and yeah, way better than Red Bull, I guess. But then you gotta worry about all those studies claiming the cancer from diet soda, and it's just so many things to worry about. That's why I
Yeah.
am definitely interested to hear all about what you've discovered from the whole plant foods. Is that how you guys say it?
Yeah, whole food plant based or just
Plant
plant
based.
based.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
I think, yeah. We switched to like fizzy water, because I do like the carbonation. So,
mm,
but we drink coffee and green tea is like super, super good for you. So,
oh yeah.
and you do green or black tea and that's got caffeine.
Yeah, my wife's been trying to get me on the tea train.
I
It's
that It's on the daily dozen checklist, and I'm like I keep forgetting to make tea. I'm gonna make some tea for this talk. That's perfect.
nice. So you have a checklist that you. Oh, I think I
Oh
saw
my
you post
goodness.
about that.
I just like I said I couldn't stop thinking about it. So this is stuff that I talk about a lot. Bright line eating was huge. It is kind of restrictive, and I don't recommend it for everybody. It was really hard. You can
Yeah.
just do plant-based and that's another. So another background is I worked in a cardiologist's office and a orthopedic oncologist's office. I worked in a bone cancer clinic and a heart clinic,
Wow.
and the heart clinic was like a mill. There were a dozen doctors. The front desk was like insane. It was like a bank, you know, dozens of doctors, 2 dozen support staff, not one dietitian, not one nutritionalist. No one was discussing like, hey, why is it that you have these issues? I mean, it's so I worked in and I had this conversation with one of the cancer doctors I worked with, and I said, why aren't we like running for prevention instead of the cure? It's like we're chasing
Right.
the goats after they've already got out of the yard. Like we should be focusing on prevention. And there's so much data now that, plants, they're medicine. I love to point out, like, I'm a green witch, right? I garden, we have a farm, I make herbal medicines and tinctures, and I dry out a lot of herbs and stuff. And, people will poo poo that, but the majority of drugs on the market are either direct derivatives of naturally occurring compounds, or they're synthetic knockoffs that are trying to do what
Yeah.
Mother Nature already did. So, like, I'm a big fan of, like, going back to nature, because I think that it's hubris to think that we can do better in a lab than
Yeah.
what is already out there. So I just discovered a guy today. His name is Dr. William Lee, and his book is called "The Diet to Beat Disease," and it's like it's food. It's the food. Food is medicine, and there's a lot of doctors that are shifting towards that, because like that starch. Um, Dr.
Oh
McDougall,
yeah.
he says, I have the best job in the world because he's a doctor that his patients get healthy. Like,
Yeah.
the heart clinics, those people came month after month. They got their regular testing. They never got better. It just stayed the
Yeah.
same or got worse. It never gets better. But there's one diet and one diet only ever proven with angiograms, which is photographic evidence of reversing heart disease. It's a very famous image, Dr. Dean Ornish in 1998. So this is one of the reasons why I'm angry, right? My nickname is Triple A, angry all the time. I am like so angry because we know how to stop the planet dying. We got to stop injuring it. We know how to like stop getting chronic illness. We have to stop injuring ourselves. So like in 1998, Dr. Dean Ornish, with it's not just diet, it's lifestyle too. So
Yeah, for sure.
another great TED talk, Lisa Rankin, Dr. Lisa Rankin, she calls it the shocking truth about your health. And she calls it the whole health cairn. You know the little stacks of rocks? They're like
Yeah, yeah,
perfectly
yeah.
balanced.
Mhm.
So those are called cairns. And she says your health is not just your physical health or your mental health, it's a whole cairn. And it's a delicate balance. And so you can eat really healthy, exercise, but if you're stressed all the time, there's constant fight or flight, which leads to inflammation. So it's a holistic approach, which again, as a natural witch, that's very much my jams. So like, go back to nature. Some of the most healthiest societies, they don't stress, they don't eat a lot of processed stuff. They're
Yeah.
not, just a lot of stuff. So it's kind of common sense, but the science has been muddled by advertising. The idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day was a advertising campaign
Oh
that
yeah.
we now take as gospel truth. And there is evidence and there's pros and cons, but the whole, the exact phrase, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, was an advertising
Yeah.
campaign. So like we have to like understand and like be really try to think harder about it. Like, is this true? Like that very famous uh, cover of Time magazine, Butter's back. Like they were saying, oh, it's great, it's okay, fat is fine. Well, what
Oh yeah.
compared to what? They were comparing it to like Oreos and donuts. That's the kind of thing that you have to kind of dig
Yeah.
into, and that's why I love Dr. Greger, Dr. Michael Greger, and nutritionfacts.org. I always say it's not nutrition theories, it's not nutrition feelings, it's not nutrition ideas, it's nutrition facts. This man and his team literally analyzed every single scientific data published on nutrition,
Hmm.
and they digest it. And he's made one book called How Not to Die, and he goes over the top 15 causes of death in this country are preventable, arrestable, or reversible with a whole food plant-based diet. And that's the science. He didn't come into it with an agenda. This is what he discovered after, years of crunching the numbers.
Yeah.
And then he made another book, How Not to Diet, and it's got almost 5,000 references, 4,900 something references. It's the most scientifically sound, basis for dieting. And it's the same thing. Whole food plant-based diet, you want foods that are high in water and fiber, so they're filling, satiety. And then there's a lot of these, he calls them the 21 tweaks, and that's like certain herbs that have proven, to speed up metabolism or all those kind of things. When the breathing techniques, all kinds of stuff. So he's science-based and fact-based, and that's what I really want to try to
Yeah.
stress, is that everything that I have discovered along my way, I'm very much interested in fact and truth, because I feel like, truly, I say, half of this country or more doesn't live in reality. We cannot get to the same page because we're not on the same planet.
Right.
And that's the same thing with diet. And keto is one of those things. People love the keto, but again,
Yeah.
what does the science say?
Don't.
30% increase of all cause mortality. The longer you do a keto diet, the shorter your life. Holy crap,
Yeah.
why would that ever be
Yeah.
advertised? Why is it okay? And we're going to see in the future, if you've been harmed by the bulletproof, there's a class action lawsuit.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I
Call this.
guarantee it's
Call
going to
this lawyer.
happen. Yeah, yeah. And I do like to point out, all
Yeah.
the
There.
plant-based doctors I follow, they're all slim, they're all trim. The older ones are up into their 70s, 80s, still talking. Dr. Wareham Ellsworth, Wareham was doing cardiac surgery into his 90s,
Oh wow.
and he was in. Let's talk about blue zones. So there are blue
What are
zones
blue
around the
zones?
world. Yeah, and this is a term coined by Dan Buettner, and it's a book and it's a diet. But he identifies blue zones, which are areas around the world where the longest lived, healthiest people. So we all know Okinawa centenarians, in Japan. The American blue zone is Loma Linda, California,
Hmm.
and that's where the Adventist headquarters are. So kind of like Utah is the headquarters of Mormons, Loma Linda is the headquarters of Adventists. So a lot of Seventh-day Adventists live in Loma Linda, and their dietary restrictions in their religion. And the closer that they
Huh.
follow these, so there's two longitudinal, generational, huge studies on the Loma Linda population called the Adventist Health Study 1, and now they're into Generation 2. So
Hmm.
these people are plant-based. They do some time restriction. They kind of fast sometimes, which there's a lot of evidence that calorie restriction is huge.
Yeah.
They eat nuts. I mean, so in the blue zones, he goes around these 6 regions, I think, and he not only is it anecdotal, he interviews people, but he brings hard scientists and statisticians with him,
Hmm.
and they do some deep epidemiological kind of investigations, and they come up with some pretty interesting stuff. And there is these common denominators, and
Yeah.
that's these giant epic studies. The one in Europe is called the epic study. There's the Harvard nurses study, and then there's another. Oh, the Bill and Melinda Gates just funded the global health burden study.
Hmm.
All of these things point to the same thing. We're not eating enough fruits and vegetables, and it's killing us. So
Yeah.
If nothing else, you don't have to stop eating all the animals, okay, fine. But just eat more plants
I
and
was
fruit
actually
and
just
nuts and
about to
seeds
ask
and
that.
beans. Yeah, yeah, it's
Uh,
not an all or nothing. It's a more is
uh,
better. More fruit and vegetables and
right,
seeds and grains, legumes, all that stuff is good. Don't be scared of it. Again, I kind of pick on keto because it's the hot thing right now, but it's
right.
also like it's so dangerous because Dr. Neil Barnard, I love him. He's another good one. Um, his aha moment. He's not a cardiologist, but his aha moment was coroner wanted to show him. He was just fresh, like into the hospital as a doctor. Showed him someone that had died of like massive coronary artery disease, and
Hmm.
he opened up the artery and he pulled out the blockage. And Dr. Barnard said it looked exactly like chicken fat.
Oh wow.
And that was his just like turn on a dime. So some people need that. We have to understand. I love Dr. McDougall says the fat you eat is the fat you wear, be it on your tummy or visceral fat, which is the dangerous fat. That's the fat that's on and
Yeah,
around your
that's organs.
organs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fat you eat is the fat you wear. This whole fat is awesome. Is just it's not true, and it's gonna kill people. And that
Yeah.
that really like, oh my God, because and then the studies with, well, people on keto doing high intensity training
Yeah.
actually are not building muscle. They're losing muscle. So
Yeah.
there have been some really cool studies on keto and actual building muscle. It's a
Yeah.
false premise. It's
Yeah,
just so
because
crazy.
you need those carbs for that instant energy to make it through those. Like carbs are one of those three that make up everything. So,
Yeah. I mean, we say we're carnivores. Our main thing is like, a potato or a rice that we always have some kind, like oatmeal.
yeah.
Don't be scared of carbs. And any diet that limits fruit of any kind is stupid. Don't run from that diet. Any diet that says you can't have a banana, run. There are people who live on bananas. They're called
Yeah.
fruitarians. They're crazy. It's okay. But no, I mean, they heal themselves. People I've seen, so this is another thing I want to talk about. I'm in a lot of support groups on Facebook of a whole food plant based. And every single solitary day, I'm not exaggerating, I see people post, I'm off my drugs. I put my type 2 diabetes in remission. There's a doctor in Houston. Her name is Brooke Goldner. She put her lupus into remission with the plant-based diet. It is not a panacea. It will not cure everything. But
Yeah.
like, that hilarious meme that is talking about fixing global climate change, but he says, what if it's a hoax and we're just making the world better for nothing? Like that's kind of like vegetarianism or veganism. It's like,
Yeah.
eh, okay, just the health
Yeah.
aspect alone, the evidence is pretty strong. And then add in the ecological devastation,
Yeah.
the use of our resources. I mean, I'm in Texas. We frack. It's just nuts how we use our water and our fossil fuels,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah, and
you
it's
know we
almost
could
ties
be
into
doing so much better.
yeah, it
Yeah,
almost ties into our UBI argument of if you set yourself up for success, you start there with that floor and then you got nowhere to go but up, right?
right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, if nothing else, just eat, just put as much color into your diet as,
Yeah.
like, I look down at my plate and I'm like, how much color is there? And then there's also the microbiome, which we're only now discovering just how important it is. Like, we
Yeah.
are as much, if not more, bacteria than human. And by taking antibiotics and eating animals that have been given a lot of antibiotics,
Oh
that
yeah.
can have an effect on your microbiome, and your microbiome can have an effect on your mental health. So when I went super hardcore plant-based, I asked my husband, I said, have you seen any differences in my mental health? And he said, absolutely, like without hesitation, because I
Huh.
used to have these like crashes, like sugar crashes, like
Oh
addiction, like
yeah.
hangry. You don't get hangry when you're eating like real food. You don't get hangry because there's not that boom and bust,
Because you're having to
So
eat more of
I'm,
it to get the same calories, right? So you get to eat a
oh
lot
yeah, I
more.
mean, oh, absolutely. That's another beauty beautiful point. Like, it is not a diet of deprivation. You take out what? Couple different animals, a couple different, eggs and cheese. That's like seven things you take out, but you can add in hundreds and hundreds of different stuff, and you can eat more than you. I mean, some people, if you are bodybuilding, you have to really pack it in because uh,
Yeah.
natural food is so calorically light but nutrient dense. So that's, I mean, and the microbiome. There's
Yep.
a really cool doctor. I can't say his last name. Bill W. It's Dr. W. Um, but he wrote a book called Fiber Fueled, and as a permaculture farmer, we absolutely adore biodiversity. It's all about packing as many different species of plants into a space because that's going to attract beneficial pollinators. It's going to, more
Mhm.
biodiversity. So in Dr. W's book, he talks about biodiversity of the microbiome. So don't count carbs, don't count micros, count the different plants that you're ingesting because every plant has like different bacterias that feed on it.
Hmm.
So if you have a really diverse plant diet, you're gonna have a really diverse microbiome.
So
And then I just discovered, yeah.
go ahead. I'll
Oh,
ask in
and
a
then
second.
yeah, Dr. William Lee I just discovered today. I'm like, oh, now I got to binge this guy. But he was talking about, you know, uh, food as medicine, and a lot of that has to do with the microbiome. Yeah.
Huh. So what do you say to the fact that uh I see this being a really effective thing later down the road because now it seems like the average person doesn't have access to that prethila that you're talking about. I have access to the supermarket and that's about it. What
Yeah.
is that just eat as much as you can out of that supermarket and sure uh factor some other things in until you can grow a garden or until the world transitions to more of a
You
plant-based.
can in most grocery stores you can get everything you need. Like beans, nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, fruits and veggies. That's all. We call that shopping the outer circle.
Uh-huh.
So for the most part, when we're shopping, we don't go into the center of the grocery store where all the packaged stuff is. You do the fresh stuff on the ring. So I had a friend, and I think this really informed me too when I worked at the cancer clinic. She had lost over 100 pounds, and it was just eating the circle, she said. So she still ate like
Hmm.
meat and stuff, but she didn't eat any processed stuff. And a lot of that has
Right.
to do with it being so calorically dense. So, like, one tortilla is 150 calories,
Oh yeah.
one tablespoon of oil is 120 calories. And when you're talking about weight loss, you do have to count calories, even when you're doing plant based, if you're doing oil. So we do no oil plant based, and I don't count calories at
Hmm.
all. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. If we have packaged stuff, the first thing I look at is the fat content and then the sugar content. And sugar is not evil because it
Yeah.
makes you fat. Sugar is evil because it blocks your brain from seeing the hormone leptin, which tells you you're full. So they've done studies where,
Hmm.
with or without sugar, if you eat a little bit of sugar, you're going to eat about 20% more than if you didn't have sugar. So that's another aspect. Like, sugar is what it does to your brain that's
Yeah.
more dangerous
It also
than gaining weight.
sets off all those endorphin highs and
Oh,
gives
yeah.
you
And then
it's
it's,
like a
yeah,
reward and everything like that. Yeah.
absolutely dopamine. We got to get more. I want more. Pushing the little button. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, I gotta avoid sugar. Growing up, sugar was my thing. I ate cookies, I ate candy, I ate all this stuff, and I got big, and then I made a turn, and then got into a bunch of sports, and then it seemed like I didn't matter what I ate at that point, and then I
Yeah,
got
we
big again
are
after
young.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, which brings me to another. I wanted to talk about epigenetics, and that's so perfect. So, you know how women are born, or when they're fully formed, they have all their eggs.
Mhm.
at the time of birth. Men create more sperm as they go, but
Age, yeah.
women have, yeah, women have all of their eggs when they're fully formed fetuses, babies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the science of epigenetics is it's like almost pre-genetic. So this is such a fun fact. I love thinking about this. You have a daughter,
Yeah.
so when your mother, I mean when your wife was in her mother's womb, your daughter was already there.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So epigenetics, yeah. Oh, I got chills. That's fun, right? So it's not just what your wife ate when she was pregnant with your daughter, it's what your her mother ate
Yeah,
that can
gets
even
passed down the
influence.
line, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so and then they talk about, we love to talk about nurture versus nature, and we kind of know the answer to that now too. So when they sequenced the genome, we were supposed to have all these miracle cures. It didn't happen. Why? Because the environment actually has a lot to do with expressing those genes, turning them on and off.
Hmm.
So they say genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger.
Hmm.
So that's another reason why we should all be packing in those plants, because they tamp down those antioxidants, those free radicals that are going to, you know, wreak havoc on our DNA.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Lee just said 10,000 things a day could go wrong with your with your genes,
Hmm.
and so
So
we're
it's
constantly healing.
so they think it's not just what you're born with, you're modifying yourself as you go, basically.
Absolutely. So we know that we're constantly regenerating. It's a lie that
Yeah.
we, like, our bones regenerate. Our liver, they can cut a little bit of our liver and we regenerate. Well, now they use, there's a thing called brain elasticity, which they've shown people have strokes. That doesn't come back, but other parts of their brains grow to compensate. So we're constantly,
Hmm.
uh, we are, and when they say we are what we eat, what are you building those cells from? Like good stuff, really nutrient dense stuff, or like sad, paltry, processed? They have to add stuff in just to
Yeah.
make it nutritious, which they do with a lot of stuff. I
Oh
love
yeah.
to point out that, um, and everybody says, oh, you got to get B12 from animals and dairy and stuff, but the animals themselves are so deficient nowadays that they give animals B12 supplement.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I mean, just take the supplement. It's fine. I got a little spray. It goes under my tongue. It's beautiful, you know. And
Yeah.
I want to talk about dairy and hormones too, because there's a misconception um, that there's, a hormone-free dairy is like different, but the way that we get dairy is from pregnant cows or cows that have just had a baby, so they're lactating,
Hmm.
and there's a ton of hormones
Right.
in that
Same with
that cow.
mama humans. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when I first started Bright Line Eating, you could still do a little cheese, and that was, I gave up sugar before I gave up cheese. Cheese was the last thing that it was so hard, and there is a reason for that. There's a thing called casomorphins in cow's milk, and when concentrated down into cheese, it can absolutely like trigger those same kind of addictive pathways. And they think the evolutionary reason for that is because you want the baby cow to keep coming back to mama. So there's
Hmm.
these, it's and so we have to understand how food works in our brain. Like we can't just be like passive consumers. We have to be like educated, informed, and active. We
Yeah.
can't just like let it happen to us, because
Yeah.
if we did, Wally, Wally, the
I love
people.
that movie,
I
but yeah,
cried when I saw that.
it's
I
pretty.
cried because I said that's where we're freaking
Have you
heading.
seen
Okay, like for real.
Idiocracy? That's another one
Yes.
that's just
Oh,
really hard to
when
watch.
Trump got elected, I said, yeah, we live in an idiocracy. Oh my God. I thought it was funny at first. I don't think it's funny anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
gets a little too serious after a while.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, he's bragging about rolling back 200 regulations.
Yeah.
Where do you think some of those regulations, meat inspections, are getting rolled back, you guys,
Yeah.
in a pandemic? Just so you know, okay?
Yeah. Seems fair. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, you
it's
mentioned
good.
it a couple times, but like I am hard on like avoiding. That's one thing I think we do good on here is we eat it sometimes just because it's quick and easy, but processed foods and stuff. That's just I always feel dirty when I have like a snack bar or something, but it's like what am I gonna do? I'm on the go. I got a baby. I gotta go for a
Yeah.
run. I need to grab something.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and that it's not an all or nothing. The more you can do, the better. But like you gotta meet people where they are. It took me a very long time to get here. I was an obese vegetarian for 15 years.
Oh
I
wow.
was because I couldn't let go of the eggs and cheese and the sugar and all that stuff that comes with it. So again, sugar is not just you don't eat just sugar. Even though did you ever do that when you were little? Like just eat sugar
Uh,
out of the bowl?
I know I put it on my Cheerios and stuff. I don't know if I ever had it
God,
straight.
so much my strawberries.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, sugar on
So
the
it's
strawberries. Yeah.
yeah, it's not just the sugar. Normally, it's what it's packaged with, which is going to be a lot of fat and a lot of animal products, which is calorically dense. So if
Yeah.
nothing else, like if you're trying to lose weight, the number one hack I would say is like drop the animal products, just even if you don't plan on doing it forever. But
Yeah.
because they're so calorically and fat dense, like that was a hack when I
That's a good
really
point.
like yeah, when I really wanted to go hard because I turned 40 and July derailed me and then it was getting closer to my birthday and I was like, oh my God, I haven't gotten a goal weight yet. And so I went really, really like strict. And I mean, I measure, Americans have no idea what a correct portion size is.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
Yes. So
buffets
with
need to
Skyline,
go.
yeah.
Like,
Oh my God. I'll never go to a buffet again after COVID. Are you kidding me?
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, but with Brightline Eating, you literally, I got a digital scale and I weighed all my food. And we have no idea how little food we truly need.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to point out in these longitudinal huge studies, they've shown that people that regularly are are like constraining calories
Calorie deficit,
live
yeah.
longer. It lengthens their telomeres, which are these longevity. I don't even know. It's called the telomeres. I don't know. Look it up. But all these Walter Longo is one of the preeminent researchers in longevity, and calorie restriction's a big one, and that's where you get the one meal a day and the
Yeah.
fasting windows and all that fun stuff. But there's a lot of science to it, and
Yeah.
it really helps. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. I did all the like calculations and stuff. That's how I lost a lot of my weight was just finding where how much of a calorie deficit I needed to lose X amount and I stuck to it and that's how the weight just kind of fell off and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, counting calories is hard. For the first when I first started Brownline eating, I got a food journal, and I weigh myself. I still do. I weigh myself twice a day. One right after your morning movement, one at night after your last pee pee, and you'll see that you lose about 2 pounds just sleeping.
oh yeah.
So, and then knowing your body, like I can tell that my period's about to come because it's like, oh, I'm not what's going on here? I know I didn't eat. Oh, okay, I'm just bloated. So it's another one of those data points that's like so important
Yeah.
to know yourself. And when we're constantly inundating our system with like I loved beer. I got so big because of beer
Mhm.
too. And
Beer's
all
so
these
good.
foods are yeah, you're just like you're so bloated and puffy and you can't even tell like if it hurts or not. And then eat when you clean up your diet and then you do have something, not so great, oh, your body tells you immediately like
Oh
I
yeah.
didn't like that. That was gross. And but before I never got those signals. And maybe it was because, you know, the the hormone stuff,
Yeah.
but it's also just being more in touch with your body is so important.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, we found
eating clean.
out. Oh, sorry, but we
No,
we found out that my wife can't eat any part of a pig basically because her like uh, what is it, pancreas or whatever that processes fat and grease just can't do it as much anymore.
yeah,
And so we dropped that from our diet, and it never bothered me before. But since she wasn't eating it, I wasn't gonna make it for myself. So then a year or so went by, we never really paid attention anymore, and then I try and have bacon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel just kind of sick now.
Yeah,
And I still ate, chicken and beef and stuff, but just
yeah.
pork is bad.
That was one of the first things we stopped eating. We don't eat pork. We haven't eaten pork in a long, long, long time. And then
Yeah.
when you factor in their intelligence level and the way that we raise them, it's absolutely, you know, I try to stick to the health thing, but there is, I mean, we can't ignore what we're doing to the planet.
Yeah.
And that, and also, there's environmental justice. A lot of these factory farms are in poor poor rural areas where people of color live, and they have higher instances of cancer, higher instances of asthma. So our eating, like if your eating habits just affected you, that's one thing, but it's not. We don't live in a vacuum. We live in a very closed loop called Gaia. She's a living organism, and what happens to one happens to us all. So we can't. And the deficit, you want to talk about Medicare. I mean, every
Hmm.
libertarian should be like all about the plant-based diet, because we could save billions and billions, and they've done studies, and there's lots of evidence that if we just made minor improvements in our diet, we
Yeah.
could like it just extrapolates so much because there's so many of us, and it costs so much in America, which is a whole nother can of worms.
So
But
that was a big question I had about the whole thing. Say best case scenario, everybody like went on a plant foods diet. Do would we even have an infrastructure for that, and would it get, since that is the now popular thing, would it get as bogged down and bad for the environment as animal products?
that is a beautiful question. I love it so much. Um, I want everyone to understand that a lot of crops that are grown right now are being grown to feed cows and picking chicks and picking all this stuff. So, yes, the short answer, we are cutting down the rainforest to make way for growing GMO crops for cows and for grazing cattle. We're cutting down the earth's lungs for something that's going to kill us in the end. Literally. Like, it's so it's just, I mean, this is the again, AAA, why I'm angry all the time. We do everything backwards and done like just the absolute least efficient way. I mean, the subsidies we give these oil and gas
Yeah,
companies, these corn companies, all these giant conglomerate subsidies, we're paying for them to kill us. We're paying for them to create a product
right.
that's addictive and is going to cause us harm. And like, and then we pay again at the doctor's office. It is absolutely insane. So there's the thing called regenerative garden farming. There's I do what's called permaculture. I say that
Hmm.
regenerative is the libertarian version of permaculture, because the three principles of permaculture is it good for the planet, is it good for the people, share the abundance. Those are the three, and this was created in the 1970s by two men, Jeff Lawton and Bill Mollison. God bless you, Papa Mollison. Um, this was made in the 1970s in response to global climate change. They knew it was coming in the 70s. We've done nothing for the 70s,
Yeah,
80s, 90s, and now the 2000s, the 10,000s and 10s. It's 2020 now.
yeah.
We still haven't done anything about this. And the number one thing that we can do is not eat animals. I'm sorry. They're incredibly horrible for the environment. Also, our military industrial complex is a close runner up, and
Yeah.
we have to talk about
Mm.
the resources that every American child, like just by creating another child. This got so much like I got so much hate for saying this, but by not making the choice not to reproduce, and I'm not shaming anyone who does. It's totally a personal choice, but you don't have to. Like,
Right.
when hubby and I first got together, it was like, so when are y'all having kids? And it's like, well, we're not going to. And they're like, oh, you'll change your mind, that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, it is
there's
kind of a
so
big
many reasons.
society norm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many reasons. to do it and to not do it. But for us, it was like, well, I don't want to work forever.
Mhm.
And so I don't want, and it's like $1 million to raise a kid. Uh,
Mhm.
that is the ecological impact of creating an entire new consumer,
Yeah.
you know, and I
Someone
didn't
you
want,
constantly have to worry about and
oh man, the responsibility. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
it's rough.
it's heroic. It is absolutely like my mom was just, I mean, parents are amazing. I tell the good ones, but like,
Yeah,
it isn't for
it's
everybody. And there's a lot of people that probably, would have been a lot happier. I have heard personally friends that, have said like, man, I wish I had
yeah,
waited or so, so it's very personal, but
it's
like it does factor in. We can't pretend like it doesn't,
yeah,
like we don't, it doesn't have, an impact on the environment. And so
right.
the things that we can do for sure is choose choose better,
Yeah.
sustenance. The animals are so resource, and again, we're growing all these crops to feed them, and people are literally dying of hunger.
Yeah.
So we could like save lives by feeding people the grains that are being fed to cows. We could save lives by feeding people plants instead of the animals. And I think it was Dr. McDougall that said, what would happen if everybody went plant-based? We'd have an epidemic of health. And right now, what's happening, what we're doing right now is not working because we have multiple epidemics. The statistics of childhood diabetes is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
When you see just back in the 80s, the rate of childhood diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes. Type 2 diabetes
Yeah.
used to be adult, and now we have childhood diabetes. It was almost non-existent, and
Mhm.
now it's a common occurrence. That
Yeah.
is like insane because
Because
when,
we've
Andrew Yang talks about a shorter lifespan, it is a lot of deaths of despair, but it has a lot to do with our diet as well.
yeah, because what's popular, like you said before, was processed foods and those sugars. They're cheap, they're easy to make, and you can get a plethora of them at the store. So the priorities go to that, especially for low income stuff and any
And the
income really.
advertising, I mean,
Like,
yeah, the deck is so stacked against us.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
hard. People don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I've gone down the rabbit hole, but not everybody knows. And but you know what? Like in these plant-based groups that I'm in, when people do figure it out, like Forks Over Knives is a great documentary. Everybody should watch it. And a lot of people go, why didn't my doctor tell me this? I was on these diabetes drugs for years, and I could have gotten like, and there's
Yeah.
this common misconception that like, oh, people just aren't going to follow through. But I want to ask you, would you rather lose a foot or eat a salad? Like,
Right.
I think the answer choice is easy. You just have to
Yeah.
like put it in terms people understand, because Americans don't think long term.
Yeah.
Obviously, we elect Trump, right? So we don't think long term. We have to start
No.
thinking about, and this is like what I said, we don't have kids. We gotta be healthy into our old age because nobody's gonna take care of us.
Right.
So and and seeing like my youngest aunt die from an elective surgery. So can I talk about the healthcare industry itself is the third leading cause of death in this country. It is estimated 100,000 to 200,000 people die because of human error in the medical system. There's not a definitive number because they don't keep real records on it, and they don't always, like my aunt died of went into outpatient rotator cuff surgery that went into a coma. They couldn't figure out why. Come
Huh.
to find out she was allergic to morphine.
Oh my
Nobody in the
gosh.
hospital figured that out. My sister figured it out. They took her off the morphine. She came out of the coma completely not there. They
Wow.
kicked her out. They sent her home, and she died at home. They called that natural causes. That's what the
Dang.
coroner of Mississippi, because there's only one, which is insane. So yeah, everybody has a medical horror story.
Yeah.
Just strike up that conversation. It's
Yeah.
a fun one. I like to talk about this because people need to be aware that your doctor is not infallible.
Yeah.
You always need to get a second opinion. It is absolutely your right as a healthcare consumer, because unfortunately, they're not all out there for your best interest. They flatlined my dad doing testing uh, because he had good pension insurance. So they just threw everything at him and they flatlined him, and they resuscitated him, but like completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
My mom had multiple MRIs done. This doctor was absolutely taking advantage of her. She's claustrophobic. So she went into this incredibly
Yeah.
anxiety inducing situation
Right.
multiple times. We got a second opinion. The very first CT scan that she had gotten in an emergency room said what was wrong with her. And he still proceeded to do. And then he said, you have multiple sclerosis. We're going to do a spinal tap. And
Wow.
I said, whoa, 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 whoa. Number one, he didn't show any films. When I worked at a cancer clinic and they did the follow up to all your MRIs, they showed you films. So that was a red flag right there. The other red flag was that guy was wearing Gucci shoes. He was real nice dressed. You know what I mean? And, and I said, how common is it for a 60 something year old to develop multiple sclerosis? I knew it's not common. It's a young person's disease.
Hmm.
And he said, well, it's not common, but it happens. And I said, no, we're going to get a second opinion. He wanted to do a spinal tap on her. Those are incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
And got a second opinion. She was B12 deficient and she had a compressed, seat,
Uh, oh
like,
yeah. The
so it,
vertebrae.
yeah. And they did traction and she's fine now. So
Wow.
you have to ask questions all the
Yeah.
time. Like, you can't just take people, because
Yeah,
there's
that
so much misconception too. So
comes with my story about the doctor earlier. He just tells me to exercise more, and it's like, well, that's not. I run.
informed. Yeah.
I'm like at the peak physicality that I can be. I don't know. I mean, I can go a little harder, but I don't know what
Yeah,
more you want.
can we put a like a question out to the Yang Gang? Like, what is this triglyceride to
HDL.
HDL, and what how do we fix it? Like,
Yeah,
Yang
that is a
Gang,
good
help.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like you said, the industry is all about like reactive medicine and not proactive. So, but I do appreciate. I learned about the DO um, medical doctors instead of just MD. They're DO, the doctor of osteopathic or whatever. And I love going to them more because they usually try and help you with more preventative health than just
absolutely.
reacting to your problems. So that's
Yep,
been a lot nicer since I started going to one of those.
yep, yeah. My sister has Hashimoto's, and I
Mm,
have a friend with a very similar autoimmune disease. My sister's been on drugs now for years and years. My
mm,
friend is now in year 3 of remission
okay.
because she did plant-based diet and she did some hormones. I don't know, like I'm not, but she's just on her Facebook memory. She's like year 3 of being in remission from my, and they wanted to burn out her thyroid. They
Oh
wanted to do
wow.
some crazy, and then she'd have to be on medication for the rest of her life. And she's like, you know what? I'm gonna see if there's something else I can do before we go that route. There's a kind of famous story of a patient literally in prep about to go to heart surgery, and he Googled like alternatives, and he found whole food plant-based diet, and he canceled his surgery and he healed himself. I mean, like,
Oh
you're going to
wow.
have scar tissue. And that's why for me, it was really important to do it by my 40th birthday, because I felt like if I didn't get my shit straight by 40, it was just going to be harder and harder.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not. That's one of the really beautiful things that I found about the whole food plant-based community. A lot of seniors are figuring it out. The drugs are not making them feel better. There's so many side effects. When I worked at the cancer clinic, you were prescribed drugs for the side effects from other drugs. I mean, it's
Yep.
just like, so there are like things we can do. And again, it's not like a panacea. It's not, I'm not a doctor. Here's my disclaimer. Okay. But like,
That's a
I have
good point.
personally experienced, and,
Yep.
a lot of doctors that I follow, some incredible, so I asked my husband today, I said, can you tell me like how you've feel now that we've been plant-based for a while, like what benefits you've gotten. And he's a heavy metal guitarist. He plays really fast, really hard,
Yeah.
and he used to get really sore hands,
Yeah.
and he doesn't get that anymore.
Hmm.
Like every once in a while, but he would just be like, "Oh, my hands hurt," and he had to wear these compression gloves, and he doesn't have to do that anymore
That's
because
awesome.
we're eating really well. And he's a 6 foot tall man. His dietary needs are a little different than mine, but and he likes to
Yes.
say, so there's a difference between weight loss, dieting, like eating for weight loss, and eating for longevity.
Oh yeah.
They can be together, but like um, once you get to your goal weight, then you can start, adding in some more, like, then the bread isn't so scary. The bread is only scary because it's calorically dense, because you're going to eat that one slice and you're not going to feel, and you
Yeah.
just wasted
Oh yeah.
100 calories. When I was super restricting, I tried to keep each meal at 300 calories, which is pretty small,
That's
but
tiny. Yeah.
I had a lot to lose, and I'm only 5'4", and I'm very small frame. So
Oh yeah. You
in
don't
high
get.
school, I was 120 pounds.
Yeah.
So I tried to keep my calories under a thousand calories a day, which is ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and I didn't always do it. Um,
Yeah.
but I lost really fast that way, and I also, you know, that's the dog. The dog rings the bell when he needs to go
Uh-oh.
out.
So
We've trained.
somebody
Yeah,
better go take him out then.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but so Jeffrey Hutton, the hubby jokes that he's in maintenance, because if you do like, what's the ideal weight? He's there.
Yeah.
But I still have like 30 pounds to go. I'd be happy at 20 right now. But he goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, I can eat more. I'm in maintenance." So when you're not restricting, you can eat a lot more, and you
Oh
don't
yeah.
have to. When you eat whole plants, you don't have to worry about blowing back up. Like, I will never get back to 200 pounds again. I'm 100% confident, because you couldn't eat enough broccoli, to make you that fat.
Yeah.
I'd
You
have
get
to be like
sick. Yeah.
chugging oil. Yeah, like there's just
Yeah.
not
All
enough
that
calories
celery
in.
juice I
Yeah,
drank was like
yeah,
no calories.
nothing. It's beautiful. That's the beauty. Oh, so like my next tattoo is going to be the word fiber, like in a
Oh,
bunch of
nice.
different plant foods, because uh, the microbiome, like, I really am interested in this. I really want to kind of get into the science of microbiome. I think I want to go to school for this kind of stuff.
Oh, nice.
But fiber, I spent my whole life constipated. My mom pooped once a week.
Oh,
This is
jeez.
like,
Wow.
yeah, this is like stuff that is a learned behavior. So when I switched her to a whole food plant-based diet, she still has some animal products, but she's 200 pounds. So I'm trying to get her, and
Yeah.
that's my mama. Like, I want her to live forever. Like,
Yeah.
this is, and just literally just yesterday, she said today would have been your grandmother's 102nd birthday.
Wow.
She died at my age,
Oh
69.
my gosh.
And so I said, Mom, this is why I want you to eat this way, because I want you to be here at 102 years old.
Yeah.
And it's doable, because there's the blue zones that show us the way. Like,
Yeah.
there's Bill Wozniak, who is very controversial. He's gotten in some trouble, but he says, if you want to be skinny, do what skinny people do. And so they study, like the
Yeah.
behaviors of skinny people. And there's some really interesting data but he's gotten in some hot water for,
Yeah. There's some
stuff.
people that are skinny because they were born into it, and some of us that have to work for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a really funny meme too. It's like, it's not that diabetes runs in your family, it's that nobody runs in your family. But which, you know, my mom
Mm.
had 6 girls. I was the middle of
Oh wow.
6. At one point, every one of us, 6 girls, were obese. Two
Wow.
of them morbidly obese. Here's the kicker, though. We're not all genetically related. I have 2 stepsisters, an adopted sister, and a half sister. So
Wow.
this is not a genetics thing. It's absolutely a
Mhm.
behavior, and that's a whole nother aspect, is the psychology of it. Food was love for us. We were,
Mhm.
even today, like, if I'm not having a great day, my mom's like, "You want to go to sushi?" Because
Uh,
sushi makes me happy.
I love
Yeah,
sushi.
I eat veggie sushi now. You can still have sushi, but we have to divorce. That's like, food is so personal.
Yeah.
That's why there's, telling somebody how to eat, oh, like that's a good way to
Yeah,
make
you're gonna
enemies.
put up some walls real quick.
Yeah. So there's like so much we have. I mean, over our entire existence, there's something about getting together over a meal, that is
Home.
very deeply connected, yeah, with
Yeah.
just I mean, everything, like our subconscious, and just so we have to retrain ourselves. And that was like the bright line eating thing was about retraining myself. Like, you don't I love the saying in bright line eating, hunger is not an emergency.
Mm.
I said, I'm hungry, what do I do? She said, don't eat. And I said, I didn't even think of that as an option. In
Just drink
America, we don't
water.
even think of, yeah, like, hunger is not an emergency. You're gonna survive out till lunch, I
Yeah.
promise you. So like, just changing the way that we look at stuff. I mean, we have to be more we have to be more thinking about it. Like, we have to be more present and cognizant about our choices.
My wife just gets really upset when I get hungry because my mood changes if I'm in that, like, because I've been doing my intermittent fasting recently because my workouts have been low. And so when I'm on the like very edge of like I finally get to eat, she's like, "You need to eat something. Just go
Yep.
ahead." Just
I love
so
that mushroom broth is really good
uh,
for that kind of stuff. With a
I
little tiny
I
tofu.
I love me some guacamole. So so
Yeah.
this is fine for me as long as I can have guacamole on everything. So
Yeah. Yes. We had a big old thing of guacamole today for
nice.
lunch with black bean tamales. So, and that, like, that's the other thing is fake meats and stuff are a really good alternative, but they're not like a good long-term thing. But they're
Hmm.
so, like, anything that you want, you can have a plant-based version of.
Yeah,
So
just for the taste, right?
yeah, I mean, I get a hankering. Like, I'm Greek. I love gyros. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Mm,
And I
so
make
good.
such good Greek food. Yeah. So pasticcio, I make amazing, and you can make it with the fake meat crumbles. You can make gyro with the fake, meat shredded. I had a barbecue pulled pork sandwich, not really pork, so anything that you want, you can pretty much find a plant-based version of nowadays, which is amazing because when we went vegetarian 15 years ago, it was a lot more slim pickings. And we're
Yeah.
on the
Oh
country,
yeah,
and
for sure.
Walmart has stuff. Yeah, it's really cool.
Cool. Well, I gotta get back to the baby and the
I
wife,
know.
it looks like.
I
Is there
get
anything
so.
else you wanna talk to the community about before we go?
I'm just really glad that it's there. I think it's amazing what you've done and what we've created. And I try to be the cheerleader. So like at the end of the night, I go and give everybody, like, little happy gifts.
Yeah.
I I just want I want people to be healthy. I want people to understand that you can empower yourself. It's so empowering to say, like, I am not a victim of circumstance or genetics. 4% of disease is actually genetics. Everything else, we have a lot of control over: environment, stress, sunshine, all that good stuff. I mean, it's a whole huge thing, but we have a lot more control and power than we either want to admit, because that means haven't taken responsibility, or that we've been allowed to believe because we think, go ask your doctor. Well, you know, no, we don't have to ask a doctor to know that eating more plants and veggies is going to make us healthier.
Yeah.
We know this. We've been told this our
Right.
whole life.
It just
Eat,
kind of
eat your fruits and veggies, and we don't do it. And there's a lot of cooking. I mean, you have to learn. It's a completely different skill set, essentially. But
hmm
the amazing thing about that is YouTube. There's
True.
amazing channels out there
And
that
and your
anything.
Twitter feed. So
Yes, lots of good stuff on Twitter.
awesome. Well, I've
But yeah,
had
thank you,
fun.
Stephen. And I love all the Yang Gang, and I just want UBI for everybody. My mom
Yes.
lost her house in the '08 crash. I've been
Oh
talking
man.
about UBI since '08.
Oh
So
wow.
when Andrew Yang happened, I was like, this man, and then everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, on to icing on the cake, but
Yeah.
holy moly.
Yeah.
It's
Someone's
the
finally
conversation
talking
is
about
there.
it for you.
Yeah, yeah. It's there, and it's inevitable at this point, I feel
Yeah.
like. the fact that it's not happened in COVID is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean Canada did it. Like
yeah,
next door neighbors. Like, come on.
yeah. So we got to keep putting pressure, and that's my agenda is UBI, health, and you know, spreading the love. We have to. We
Yeah.
are really all in this together. There's not just a you and an I. It's a we.